What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the E4 Explicit podcast. I'm Corey, and today I interview, once again, Lena Derhally. But this episode is a little different. We dive into the new case that has basically swept the entire country and world. It's the 4 students at the University of Idaho campus that they were murdered off campus. And we dive deep into all the factual events and factual information that is out in the public. We also dive into the fact that she is a psychotherapist. She knows a lot of profilers, and she did a lot of research on the profilers that are coming up with the profile of the suspect. And we talk about what that profile is and who they should be, or who the police are actually looking for. And now that the FBI is involved, it's just taken a whole nother turn. So it's all factual. We don't go down any rabbit holes. If we do talk about something that is kind of not true or not factual or proven, we establish that from the beginning. But it's a really interesting look on what could have happened, what we know happened, and what we think is going to happen. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell notification so you get notified every single time I post new content. And enjoy this special episode of the E4 Explicit podcast with Lena Derhally. Peace out. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the E4 Explicit podcast. And today, once again, and now for a third time, Lena Derhally, thank you for coming on.
Yeah. This might be my second appearance, though.
Technically, it's your second because it's the third, but the second one hasn't come out yet because of the time sensitiveness of this. So what we're going to talk about. So what we're going to talk about today is strictly the Idaho, was it Moscow, Idaho?
Moscow, yeah.
Is where these murders happened. 4 Idaho University students, or University of Idaho students, were killed, were murdered in a house off campus right before a Thanksgiving break. It was 4 of them. And here we go. Kaylee, I don't know how to say her last name.
Kaylee Gonsalves is how you say it. Yeah.
She was 21.
Mm-hmm.
Madison Mogan, 21 as well. Was it Zana?
Xana, I believe.
Xana, okay. Xana Kernodle, 20, and then her boyfriend Ethan was 20 as well. Mm-hmm. So kick it off, Lena, because this is crazy.
It's crazy. And at first, Corey, I want to thank you because I actually approached Corey and I was like, I'm obsessed with this case. Can we do an episode on it? So here we are. I just think, well, because there's so much, as Corey and I were saying before we recorded this, there's so much information out there, and a lot of it is speculative and theories. And I think this is one of those cases like the Chris Watts case, which I've been on previously to discuss with Corey. It's one of these cases that really hooks people, and it's just really, and it's so disturbing, and it's everywhere. So I thought it would be good that we kind of explore this from a factual perspective.
Definitely, yeah.
And where do you want me to start?
I mean, let's start from the beginning. From what, like let's let me think here. I think we should approach it like we said in the beginning, like from a factual direction. But from what the news, the first news that broke, like it was kind of up in the air. No one knew what really happened, and I guess everyone suspected the people that were in the house first, because there was no way that anyone could not hear 4 people get murdered and other people not hear them in the house, from what I gathered in the news. But that's, I think, went a different direction at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I first even heard vaguely about it before a lot came out, there was speculation. Maybe it was a murder-suicide, maybe it was a drug overdose. Nobody thought that, hey, somebody could walk into a home where 6 people were, stab 4 people to death. And in a from what I hear, the crime scene was incredibly gruesome and bloody. They have pictures on from the outside of the house where you can see what appears to be blood coming from the outside of the house, like seeping out from the inside. So this was a really gory crime scene. Somebody comes in, stabs 4 people to death, walks out, and here we are. We're a month out from when this happened. So this happened technically November 13th. They believe they were killed between 3 and 4 in the morning. We're here December 11th, a month out, and there are still no suspects. And so somebody, essentially walked in, butchered people like a real life horror slasher movie, walked out, and is still free.
Oh, that's insane. That's great. I mean, Okay. So what do we know right now? Like that's factual.
Okay. So yeah, and I've been going over the press releases because I do think it's important to use the language the police have released. And
Sure.
so what we do know is that there were two surviving roommates. I'm not going to name them. Their names are public now and out in the media, but I'm not going to name them personally. And the house is 3 stories. And so there's 2 entry points to the house. The first floor, you could actually, it's an above ground, but you could almost think of it as the basement or lower level, even though it's not underground. There's one, the main doorway goes to the first floor, and then you have 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. The second floor, you can access the second floor by sliding glass doors that go into a kitchen and a living room area. And then you have 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. Now, there was only one roommate who had a bedroom on that floor at that time. We do know there was a 6th roommate who was not living at the house at the time of the murders, but Xana and Ethan were in the bedroom on the 2nd floor. And then you have to go up the stairs to the 3rd floor where Kaylee and Maddie were.
Right.
And so nobody has really, I think, confirmed for sure the entry point of the killer. But I know that I think a lot of people believe that it's essentially that he must have entered from the sliding glass doors. And maybe that's why the 2 roommates were spared, because I think this is also the source of a lot of speculation, is why did these 2 people live? Well, it's possible that this person, the murderer, walked in through the 2nd floor, went up to the 3rd floor, and didn't even know there were 2 people on the bottom floor. So, there's just a lot but we do know for a fact that the 2 roommates were in the bottom floor and survived. And we know that there's 2 entry points to the house.
So real quick,
mm-hmm.
Let me see. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. Perfect. Yeah. So that's, as you can see, the first floor entrance. That's where where the 1122 is, that doorway. That's where the 2 surviving roommates were, on that floor.
Right.
The floor above, from the back of the house, you can see that the sliding glass doors, that's the 2nd floor. And the balcony above is the 3rd floor where Kaylee and Maddie were.
Right.
Kaylee's father has spoken out to the media a lot, and he said that Kaylee and Maddie were in the same bed when they were killed. So they were actually in the same room. So what we do know is it's likely that Kaylee and Maddie were in the same room, and Xana and Ethan were in the same room. So technically, the killer only had to go into 2 rooms.
And this is the 3rd floor up here.
Yeah, so. And I believe that's Kaylee's room, from what I understand. And I believe they were killed in Maddie's room. Right. So that was not the site of the murder. So we do know that. Another fact that we do know is that the police say that the 911 call, so let's say they were killed November 13th between 3 and 4 in the morning is the estimate. The 911 call was made at noon on November 13th, or, a few minutes before, like 11:56 or something. And they said that it was from one of the roommates' phones, but it was not a roommate who made the call. So there were other people who came to the house, and that it was a report of an unconscious person. So even in the press release, the police say that the report was that they had thought somebody on the 2nd floor had passed out, and the 911 call was for an unconscious person. So then in the press release, the police say, when they arrived, the roommates had other friends there, and that the call was made from inside the house. Now, there's some rumors and speculation that a roommate had seen what had happened and ran outside and passed out, and the 911 call was about the roommate that had passed out. But the press release and the language is that the call was made from inside the house about an unconscious person that they believe had passed out. So this is really interesting because you think you live in a college house and the kitchen's on the 2nd floor. And if you're worried about one of your roommates, you would think, oh, you would just kind of barge in there, right? So people don't know if the doors were locked from the inside or not. So this has been really kind of interesting and confusing as well. Did the roommates see anything? It doesn't sound like it, right, from the language of the press release. So it sounds like, that they were worried about someone. And it also says that the cops, when they arrived on the scene, that they were the ones that found all 4 bodies. So it doesn't sound like any of the roommates or the people that they called to the house saw the bodies. Again, just looking at the factual language from the press release.
Okay.
So we know that as well.
So how my brain initially goes to, how can 4 people, like you said, get butchered and no one hear this, especially when there's 2 people basically on the other side of a wall?
Right. Well, yeah, so there's been a lot of speculation about that too, is that maybe the way the house was, or that college kids learned, because this was a party house. So this has been established too, that these people had parties all the time. People were in and out. People knew the door code. So there was a padlock door code. And so that, when you're in college and it's a party house, you learn to tune things out. So maybe they had earplugs in, maybe they had music, or
drunk and sleeping and just out.
Yeah. And people also said, the coroner, again, here's some more factual evidence. The coroner's press release said that they were likely asleep when they were killed. So that sounds like an ambush to me. It also sounds like, if they got stabbed in the throat or something like that, or from shock, they may not have screamed. And so again, it was a party house. People were in and out. So even if the first floor roommates had heard, rustling or someone walking up the stairs, their first thought is probably not, oh, there's a mass murderer in my house with a knife who's about to butcher 4 people. So, and even if they did hear something unsettling, I think we all have had moments when we've heard something, we're like, am I being paranoid? Yeah, probably, go back to sleep kind of thing.
Right.
So I think it is totally likely they could have slept through, especially if the 2 surviving roommates had been drinking heavily, and maybe they just passed out and were out cold. So I think there's lots of explanations for why they didn't hear it. What I think is really interesting is, as the month has progressed and more has come out, there's actually new body cam footage from some officers that were called to the field behind this house around 3 a.m. And so one of the officers, you can see the body cam footage is online as well. Like you can see the house from his body cam. So like you can see one of the lights on the 3rd floor go off at a certain point. And so that's, maybe when they went to bed or whatever, but there is body cam footage. Allegedly, there's Ring doorbell footage from a neighbor who know that Kaylee and Maddie got home from a bar that they were at 1:56 a.m. So if they caught Kaylee and Maddie coming home, depending on what entrance, I'm thinking it was probably from the front, but somebody saw them either get out of, they had a private ride share, not an Uber, but, I think it was affiliated with the university, a safe ride home. So we do know there was Ring doorbell footage. We now know that there's some body cam footage from the field behind the house between 3 and 4 a.m. There was an overwhelming amount of evidence left. Kaylee's dad had said that the killer was very sloppy and left a ton of evidence. And we have the FBI on it. The state of Idaho has allotted $1 million to this investigation. And, we still can't figure out, well, who did this?
Right. I think too, like, knowing how like people like the killers like this would think, there's a lot to be said about how I saw the conference with the father saying how sloppy it was. And it's like, okay, they have all these resources and all this money. And I know things take time. They're probably going to fast track this because you got, 4 white kids murdered brutally like this. They're going to, of course, put a lot of resources into it. And I think that, if he's sloppy, if there's fingerprints, if there's DNA, I mean, because, as you know, in knife victims, a lot of it, I mean, these guys were probably sleeping like the coroner said. So there might not have been a lot of fighting back like you normally would, because most killers that stab people have wounds themselves because the knife gets so bloody and it slides through their hands and so on and so forth. So like the fact that there's none of that, there's no DNA, there's nothing like that has been at least out in the press is kind of surprising to me.
Yeah. And actually the coroner did say that she did not state which victims, but some of the victims had defensive wounds. And so usually when we know somebody has defensive wounds, they may have DNA under their fingernails.
Right.
Corey and I were both local to the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. the case back in 2015, the mansion murders here in DC, they caught the guy because he had ordered a pizza during this home invasion, and he killed, the 3 members of the family and their housekeeper, and then he torched the place, but they were able to salvage evidence before, it burned completely down, and they caught him because he left DNA on the pizza crust.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
So
that he had ordered from Domino's while he had this family under, in a home invasion. And so, I mean, these days you'd think with DNA, but it's, what it sounds like to me is that this particular killer doesn't have his DNA in a database. So, the mansion murders, the guy was a prior offender, so they had his DNA. Right. So I think that's an important piece of information that I think, this is my speculation, but I think that I'm not sure if this is his first time killing humans, but it sounds to me like this is probably the first major offense, and that he's flown under the radar.
Well, that's a good point, because they actually arrested a convicted killer a mile away, right. who had a slice on his arm, but it was much more fresh than a couple of weeks ago. And, that's where they like ruled him out almost immediately. Yeah. A couple of days later, they ruled him out. And I would say they probably have some sort of DNA evidence of the killer. And they said, okay, to that guy, it's not him, because he obviously he murdered someone, he killed someone, he killed him, he shot a man. So like, he's definitely in a database somewhere. Yeah.
And he probably had an alibi as well. It was probably pretty easy to rule him out because, right. the prior criminal history. So that's why I think I think personally that this is a first-time killer of humans. It's not to say that this person hasn't killed animals before. That's usually how they start.
Right.
Again, going back to Chris Watts, another case you and I have talked about, it's a family annihilation, but it's also a mass murder. He killed 3 people and an unborn child. He had 0 criminal offenses. I mean, the guy probably didn't even have a speeding ticket. He was such a law abider. So, when a lot of people say, that somebody can't kill 4 people at once for the first time, they definitely can. So that's my opinion.
And the other side of this too, you have to consider is the way that this was done is extremely I'm not saying intimate, but what's the word? Like
personal.
Very personal. I mean, when you stab someone, that's like a whole different bracket, I think, of violence. And in this manner, into how you said earlier, the crime scene was apparently extremely gruesome. I don't know. That just takes a different kind of person in my and also most times when people are stabbed, it's a crime of passion in a lot of ways. Maybe you did know them, so you already have this kind of internal conflict with them that drives you to be that kind of personal. I don't know.
Well, that brings us to another important point, which is, was this a targeted attack or not? Because this has been a huge controversy. Now, I have the original press release that came out pretty early. It was November 15th. So this is just 2 days after the crime had occurred. And it says, the City of Moscow Police Department would like to address community concerns about public safety. We hear you and we understand your fears. We want you to know that we, like you, have been devastated and distressed by these young lives that were cut short needlessly. But here's the important point. We determined early in the investigation that we do not believe there is an ongoing threat for community members. Evidence indicates that this was a targeted attack. At this time, we have shared every piece of information that we can without compromising the ongoing investigation. Now, what's kind of been an SHIT show, I know we're explicit, so I could probably say.
Yeah, a shit show.
Shit show, yeah, E for explicit. Yeah. So yes, I know that it's been a shit show because the prosecutor's spoken, other people have spoken, they'll say it was targeted, they'll walk it back. But I think one thing that they have been pretty consistent about is that they have some kind of evidence that this was a targeted attack. And now Kaylee's father, and some of the media interviews he's given, has said that the killings were different in nature. That somebody, from what he's alluding to, that somebody was killed in a much more vicious manner than the others, which would, give some evidence that, in fact, this was a targeted attack. So I think there's just so much we don't know that the police and FBI are holding on to, including motive, and, their evidence for this alleged targeted attack. But then, there's also the question, well, who was the target? That's where a lot of the theories and speculation come in. Was the house targeted? Was it one person? Was it two people? That's what we really don't know. But I think when you take this original press release, I think that they have to have some pretty interesting information to suggest that it was targeted by just from releasing that statement. I think they're trying to be very careful about compromising the investigation if this does go to trial.
That's a good point. And also too, they would not, that's 2 days or a day or two after that happens.
Yeah.
That's typically like, they're not just going to say, oh, don't worry about the community. They would definitely yes. let people know, like, this isn't random. Watch out. This person is out there doing this.
Yeah.
So you're right. They probably have some sort of evidence or information that they're withholding. And they clearly do. Because, I mean, just like any investigation, they don't want to give too much information because there might be certain things that the killer doesn't know or that the killer would only know that no one else would. But so what does that say about this person? I know we talked off camera that there was a lot of profilers that were doing their job of profiling this. What are they saying, and what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in that part, and I was interested. I watched as many profilers as I could on YouTube. Some of the top in the nation have been interviewed for this case, and a lot of them have said the same thing, and it kind of matched up with what I was thinking, because I'm very interested in criminology and profiling as well, even though that's not my main field. And so I think the general consensus among most, I won't say all because I haven't watched all of them, or whatever is out there, but most is that it looks to be a white male in his 20s or 30s. I think it's not in the inner circle, but it's likely someone that they had contact with at some point. So it could be, an acquaintance, or even further out from an acquaintance, maybe even some, like a one-time interaction at some point, or a stalker. One of the things I think is interesting that we bring up is the social media component, which we can get to after this as well. But I will say before we get to that I believe that somebody was watching their social media profiles. What's really interesting, and I think really eerie and foreshadowing, is that Kaylee posted a photo just mere hours before she was murdered. And it was all the victims were in the photo together. Now, remember, Ethan did not live at the house. He lived at the Sigma Chi fraternity, which was essentially across the street from the King Street house. But, he was in the photo with all 5 of the roommates who were living there. And Kaylee wrote a caption and she said, "So lucky to be surrounded by these people every day." And it was a slideshow and a series of pictures of the roommates acting all happy together. Now, here's what's interesting as well, is that Kaylee had essentially almost moved out by this point. She was actually supposed to graduate. I believe the graduation is today or yesterday. She was going to graduate early and move to Austin, Texas. But she was only visiting for the weekend. So she had been home with her family. And she had just bought a Range Rover. She was also very driven and she worked really hard. She had jobs and she had bought not a brand new Range Rover, it was used. And she was excited to show it to Maddie. So she came back for that weekend with the Range Rover to show Maddie. And so there's some interesting piece there. Again, that's a speculative piece about, well, what does that mean? But I think, when we find out more information, which eventually we will, I do think that there will come to light. There's something about her being there that weekend. I don't know if that makes her the target. We don't know, but there's something about her. Yes, that's the photo.
This is the one that you're talking about with all of them in it, right?
Yeah. And that's Kaylee writes the caption, "So lucky to be surrounded by these people every day."
Right.
So my speculation, I believe that the killer was watching the social media profiles and watching the patterns and the movements of these people, knew they were home. But I also think that, this is likely somebody who is aggrieved by one of them. And this in trying to get back at them, and something about this picture of these people being happy together infuriated this person.
Do we know which victim had more attention to them as far as the killings?
We do not. All we know is Kaylee's dad, and I don't think the police are probably happy about him even sharing that information, was that the killings, they said they did not match up. There's not an equality to them. It seems like one person may have been, or two, we don't know. We do know, again, that if there were two targets, it was likely either Kaylee and Maddie or Ethan and Xana, just because they were almost like, the two best friends since they were about 12 years old, the girls, and sleeping in the same bed. And then Ethan and Xana were the couple sleeping in the same bed.
Wow.
So yes, I think we have somebody, and the criminal profilers will also say that, this is somebody who's likely a psychopath, meaning this was a very risky killing. So somebody is, like we had said in the beginning, like somebody who can take a risk like that. This is one person entering a home with 6 people. He could easily have been taken out, right? But this is somebody, again, who probably watched the house and stalked them and knew where he was going and knew what he was doing. And, this was a party house. He chose the house on the night that it was eerily quiet, I hear, that there weren't any other people there. So this is somebody who had information about the house. And again, a psychopathic individual. I also believe that he's a sadist, and that and again, other criminal profilers have also said he probably enjoyed these killings. Maybe he has a souvenir from them. I think he's getting off on all the media attention. Here we are, but enjoying the fact that he's not caught. That's the narcissistic side. Because the narcissism is so extreme in this, that again, that risk, to be able to take that risk and walk out and leave such a sloppy crime scene with all these cameras around and DNA and everything, and walk away. I mean, he's gloating that it's been a month and he's watching and probably enjoying the fact that everybody is struggling to apprehend him. And I think that, and, what's interesting is the police also released something about graduation, which again is interesting because even if they believe this attack was targeted, again, this is obviously somebody, I think, who enjoyed killing. And if this was the first time he may have enjoyed it, he may try to do it again. And so that's when they sort of had to walk back the targeted statement and say, well, we can't say this is not a threat to the community because the guy's still out there. How do they know? Even if it was targeted, right?
Still.
Yeah. So they were saying with graduation, it was, and I think this is interesting too. I wonder what they know here, that, they wanted people to be vigilant during graduation. So I wonder if they think, again, that the killer is still kind of around the Moscow area and maybe attending the graduation or something like that. I know that Kaylee's mother did not want to have a proper funeral for her yet because she was worried that the killer would show up. And again, I think a lot of criminal profilers and myself also believe that that's a very possible scenario when you have a large, like these vigils. You and I have talked about Scott Peterson before, but a lot of these crimes, a lot of these perpetrators will show up at the vigils and the funerals. Again, it's something that they kind of enjoy. And so I think that there's a possibility that, Kaylee's mom is correct, that this individual would show up at a funeral service. And like the police said, who knows, maybe they're even at the graduation or some of these memorials they've had for these kids.
Right. So what is your gut telling you? Because I know we're not going to speculate, but there was, I saw this on TikTok. Someone was explaining that there was a food truck person involved. Have you heard about this?
Yeah.
So like what you're explaining, and how maybe this person was, disrespected by these girls or whatever, and then kind of still knew the area and knew and watched and easily could find them on social media. I mean, I found them, I found their TikToks and their Instagrams in 20 and 15 minutes. So that, I don't know, because they kind of told this person to go fuck themselves, essentially.
Yeah, and they've investigated that guy. So the cops have ruled out several people. But from what I understand is just because they've ruled them out doesn't mean they can't come back to them in the investigation if new information shows up. It just means for right now. There was a Twitch live stream from the food truck, that was the last time, besides the Ring doorbell camera, when Kaylee and Maddie came home, which was 1:56 a.m. That was the timestamp on the Ring doorbell. The Twitch cam had them ordering a carbonara pasta and had some interactions where Maddie had flipped off this one guy who was kind of, but that was one of the first people that not only the web sleuths and the Reddit people and everything had explored, but
The
it was
cops
also the
did.
cops did
Yeah.
as well, because it was like, oh, here's, and they were able to rule him out. They were a bunch of the girls, two of the girls, Maddie and Kaylee. Maddie had a serious boyfriend. He's been ruled out. And Kaylee was on a break from a boyfriend. So of course, people were unfairly, speculating about him. But they ruled him out as well. Kaylee had called him about 6 times right before 3 a.m. and he didn't pick up. And Maddie had called him twice from her phone after that, and he didn't pick up. And so, he said that he was sleeping. But again, a lot of these, I think, would probably be pretty easy to rule out the inner circle right away too, because you can just ask them for DNA,
Yeah, and then it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I think they definitely have DNA of the killer. They have
I
to.
believe. Yeah. I
'Cause
mean, in that kind of crime scene, they have to, again, I'm thinking about the mansion murders, which was a sloppy crime scene, and the
Right.
guy tried to burn it down again.
Right.
And I watched the trial, or at least I read about the trial, and it wasn't just the pizza crust. There were multiple pieces of DNA, even just the tiniest hair in the bedding, like there's so much DNA that can be extracted from a crime scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when the killer's been all over the house.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And like that much blood and just like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it kind of not reminds me, but like how they caught Gary Ridgway. Dave, he's a King County sheriff and then came back and ran for Congress, and he came back as a sheriff and then opened the case up. Like he had saved evidence for over 20, 30 years that he knew would be used for DNA. But like they ruled Gary Ridgway out multiple times throughout a 20-year period until they had that DNA match.
Yeah.
So hopefully this won't take that long, but I just feel like there's way too much.
Yeah.
It's 2022. I mean,
Yeah.
it's only a matter of time, I think, until this person is either caught or they kill themselves or something.
I agree. And I'm also thinking about the Delphi murders, which were recently arrested someone, which was the 2 girls in Indiana, the 13-year-olds. And they had actual cell phone evidence too, voice of the guy, because the girls were smart enough to record, and they had some recording. And they had the guy's voice, and they had a picture like from a security camera of the guy in his build, but it took them 5 years. The guy was working. I mean, he hasn't gone to trial yet, but the suspect, right? He was working at the local CVS. In 5 years, he was, there, and they had all this evidence, but they were finally able to get him after 5 years. So I do think eventually they're going to get, well, he has to go to trial, but the CVS
this
guy.
is a couple days ago.
Like a couple weeks ago.
Well, the latest report.
I haven't checked it in a while, but
Wow, that's good, because I remember like that happened like 2017, and like
and there was 2 13-year-old girls again,
right,
in a small town, and it's really unsettling for people who live anywhere, in the vicinity where like they don't catch the guy. So there's also the Hyundai Elantra in this case. That's
the white one.
The white Elantra. I have heard that they've asked Canadian Border Patrol to keep an eye out for this car. They don't have a license plate, but they have the year,
right,
the year model of it. And so I think that's a really important piece of information, because they're also saying, we think the occupants or the person driving the car, the owner, will have critical information about this case. Now, this came out a few days ago. And this white Elantra was obviously spotted in the immediate vicinity of King Road, at that time frame. So you would think that the person who owned that car, likely, everybody I know has heard about the Idaho case. It's all over the news. Right. And this guy was in the area. So why hasn't someone come forward? I mean, there's many reasons. Again, that would all be speculation, but I do think, again, that's curious. Well, how come this person with the Elantra has not come forward with any information? And so I think that might be the key to solving this, is finding out who was driving that car.
Sure.
That night.
2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. Yeah.
So that's my gut. And I'm going to ask you about your gut, but my gut is the Elantra is one of the main keys to solving this. and that there was a social media component and a stalking component,
Mhm.
and that they had been watched, and that there was a motive and a personal motive, like you said. And that's what my gut's telling me. Other than that, I'm kind of like, I don't know, but those are the things that are strongly kind of speaking to me right now. What about you?
Well, I'm on the same page, because I think
Yeah.
that there's like, I don't think that this person, maybe they've been there. They've been to a party. They've seen what's going on. Because, like you said, this is a party house.
Mhm.
Um, I agree. I think it's someone that's not directly involved with their inner circle, and it's someone outside of their circle that maybe is jealous or is jaded or just feels some type of way towards them.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I'm with you 100%. I agree. I don't think that it's, but see, I don't know if the person is like on the run though. Like,
Yeah, I don't either. That's the thing.
yeah, I don't think they're like heading out of the state, or like, because you think about it, it's probably like a young man, like a 20
Yeah.
to
I
30
think
year old
he's
man.
around
Right.
the area. And
I
like I said, I
agree.
think he could be showing up at the graduation. I think he's
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
And he's ballsy. Like I said, look at the risk he took to commit this crime. Somebody
Yeah.
who's going to take that kind of risk, like they'll take other risks too,
Right.
because again, the narcissism is
It's
so
too
high
much.
that it's like, they don't think nobody's going to catch me again. Look what Chris Watts did,
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
you
And I think
know?
the Ethan too, Ethan's a big boy.
Oh yeah, he's tall and he's athletic.
Yeah. So like, I feel like, obviously maybe he took him out first just because, like, well, because of that element. I don't know. But the coroner saying that they were asleep is obviously that person had an advantage because they were
Yeah, yeah. I think,
sleeping.
they were ambushed in their sleep. And by the time,
Yeah.
you're alert. But yeah, he had to have ambushed Ethan. Who knows? Maybe Ethan and Xana were just unfortunate, bystanders that were witnesses, or the other way around. Yeah, again, we just don't know.
Yeah.
But I do believe the police has a lot of this information that we don't know, which again is what's essentially created all this speculation, because we really just don't know so much that they know.
Right.
That's also
S-
what my gut tells me.
So why? I get that they want to hold things close to the chest because they don't want to jeopardize the investigation.
Mhm.
But I feel like someone who is this ballsy, this level of narcissism would, like, putting that, everything that they know for the most part out into the media and let social media do its thing. I think that would be more of a benefit than holding a lot of information, just because you would put someone under pressure and maybe they would
Mhm.
screw up or do something else, or I don't know. That's just my thought.
Yeah. I think it's more to do with the legal system, like what they
Mhm.
can present in court and what can be used against them in court, or like any slip up, they could have a case thrown out in court. I think that's
Okay.
actually the
The
really
reason
important piece of the secrecy. Yeah, I have friends who are criminal defense attorneys and
they're
things
like,
like that. So
they, yeah,
yeah, like there could anything that and that's really the thing when they're talking about compromising the investigation. It's like anything that can't be used in court or anything that might get something dismissed, like you have to be so careful
that's
what
true.
you put
Yeah.
out there.
And social media would definitely do that for sure. Like, people
Yeah,
would go down a rabbit hole, like,
yeah,
and just make shit up. And
yeah.
oh, wow. Yeah.
And
Okay.
again, like they say that there's things that only the killer knows.
Right.
And so they want to keep that information private. So when they interrogate them, hopefully, they may slip up and give this piece of information that nobody knows, and then boom.
Yep.
It's also kind of like how they interrogated Chris Watts for 5 hours, and it's like
Yeah.
eventually something's going to break, something's going to slip. And so you got to keep that information really close, because that once that person, the tiniest thing slips, but nobody would know that but the killer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Those,
So,
you watch those interrogations with the woman too, the woman cop that was grilling
mhm.
them. I mean, and the dad comes in, and
Yep.
the way they used that, like, those emotions to just make him
Oh
break
yeah.
were fucking incredible.
Yeah. And they knew he did it. You know what I mean? They
Yeah. They
just
already
had
knew.
to get
Right.
him to admit it. And that one tactic that they used that actually worked was, coaxing him into saying, "Hey, did your wife hurt the girls?" Which
Right.
he had this kind of false confession, but that's something they actually do in the FBI is if they can even get you to commit to a lesser crime, they just want to get you to admit to something. So then
Sure.
they get you, and then the evidence will speak for itself in court. But
Well, it's funny you say that, because I watched a video the other day on YouTube. It popped up, and because of course now all my algorithms are totally fucked. because it's all violence and murder.
Oh,
So
yes. And I know you've been trying to stay away from
I
that
know, I
too
know.
lately. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. So I was watching this murder happened. This gay man got shot in the back of the head, killed in his basement. And the person that found him was this man and his wife and their kids.
Mhm.
And long story short, the person that killed him was the man who found him with his wife and kids, who was having an affair for years with him. And when they were doing the interrogation, the cop literally said, he's like, you know what? He's like, and they already knew he did it. They like knew, they had video evidence of him driving and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like, they just needed him to admit to something. So he's like, I think my idea is, it was a total accident. Like maybe you guys got into some sort of scuffle. He fell, literally just explaining it. And then the guy was just like,
Oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
that's what happened.
Yeah,
And they were like, okay, turn
Yeah.
around, put your hands behind your back.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
it was just like, they're allowed to do that?
Yeah. They can feed them. It's a tactic that like gets them to commit to a lesser crime.
That's crazy.
Feeds them an idea. Yeah.
That is crazy. I feel like that's
Yeah. So then Chris Watts was like, oh yeah, so now I can say my wife killed my daughters and I saw it and I got in a rage and I killed her. People will understand that. But again, where Chris Watts slipped up with that is he said that Shanann was choking the girls and he went and choked Shanann. Well, the cause of death was smothering.
Right.
For the girls.
Yeah.
And that's different,
Yeah. He's a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Sorry. So what do you think? I know we were talking about what's going to happen, but what do you think how long do you think that this is going to be able to ride out? Because you're talking a month now, all the budgets and money that's went into this investigation. I mean,
I don't know. I hear, like other people said, and I agree, this is a PR nightmare for the University of Idaho. Like people are not going to want to come to this school.
no.
Parents aren't going to want to send their kids to this school while this psycho is out on the loose. And so, there's a lot of incentive to solve this crime. I hope it's soon. Like I said, I think there's something about the white Elantra that will, crack the case, but I'm hoping it's I'm hoping it's soon because again, I just feel for all the residents of Moscow and surrounding areas that are essentially going to be living in fear.
Right. Yeah. Well,
for justice, for these kids like this,
they got murdered. Yeah.
Justice. And it's, I really hope that any crime like this is solved right away. And again, I'm just absolutely shocked that in 2022, somebody walked into a house, did this and walked out. And here we are a month later.
Yeah. And still don't know who it is. It's about 2 months ago, a person that works at the company that I work at, his daughter goes to a local university down in Virginia, and some like 6'5" like meth addict kicked in their door. And now this is a house full of 4 girls. Kicked in their door, high as a kite, ran through the house trying to find them or do something to them, and they all luckily hid in closets and everything. And the guy got in their shower and like he was running around naked in the house. Like, so when this happened, I'm like, Jesus Christ, like they're lucky that guy didn't fight. He was huge. He was a giant. I mean, he literally ripped the door off the hinges from the front door.
That's
so
terrifying.
It made me think, I'm like, colleges, I mean, I'm close to University of Maryland. There's, Catholic University. Like, there's a lot of off-campus, living, which, even on campus can be dangerous. But there's something to be said about like the universities maybe have to kind of have a little bit more of a safety, I think, protocol or something when it comes to things like these, because these children are basically defenseless and they're all drunk most of the time.
I mean, my thing, especially after this case, and I lived off campus in college, and I've been talking to my college friends about it, being like, oh my gosh,
because you partied.
People, I lived in an off-campus fraternity house with one of my best girlfriends, and it was a party house, and people were in and out all the time. So it was like the door was not. We had 2 doors, but and it was also not in the safest area.
Right.
I mean, there's so many things, but I think one thing from this case that I hope everybody learns from is security cameras are key.
Right.
Keep, you know what I mean? Like get your parents or somebody, I think with these off-campus houses having not just Ring doorbell bell cameras, actual security cameras around the house,
Lights.
and the perimeter and the outside, the lights, the flashing lights, because I think that would be a real deterrent. Again, the reason this guy's still out there is because, and that there's no cameras besides a Ring doorbell. But I think if other people got them, that would be a real deterrent. So maybe that's a piece of it for off-campus housing.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point, because like anytime, like I'm a big believer in deterrence, because I have like stage, like for my house, I'm like a total fucking panic person. So like
Yeah, same.
I'm always worried about someone gonna break into my house. But I
Yeah.
have, like I'll have signs outside. I'll have literal sign that says like, this, I own a firearm. Like if you come in my house,
Yeah.
like you don't want to come in. So I think there's like levels to it. But if someone really wants to get in and they want to come into my house, I know they want to cause me harm. They're not here to just rob me and take my things and get away. Like
Right.
they're here
Right.
to cause harm. So, there's that element of it too. And that probably wouldn't even have stopped this person, because it sounds and it feels very much like this person was on a mission and they wanted to do these things that they did.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, we don't know. But yeah, I think security cameras, alarm systems, like get all the deterrents you can. Put the stickers in the window. That's what I do. Where this house is protected by. I got
right.
everywhere.
Yeah. The lights automatically turn on and shit. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I have all that.
Yeah.
I see the fox, the late at night fox. And
right.
those are,
Raccoons.
I got them all.
Yeah, I know. I want to see those guys. I don't want to see anything else.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Yeah, I'll take that all
Foxes,
day.
raccoons, well done.
Yeah. Oh man. So what's next in this case? As far as like press releases, I know the FBI is involved. They get over like, they have over 6,000 tips or something crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think something's gonna break again. There's always something new, even though it's been a month. Like there's always been interesting things, like the cop body cam that just released. They had to have had that for a while.
Sure.
So there, that was something that they had, the Elantra. So I think like there's the cops are slowly releasing the information. And I think they're getting closer, I hope. So I think what we're going to see, I think we're going to be seeing some more interesting tidbits kind of slowly being rolled out. And hopefully again, an arrest soon.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, it's a matter of time. There's no way that, in this day and age, someone's going to get away with something that heinous.
Yeah.
Anything else, Lena?
I think we covered
all the factual stuff, because we could have been on here for 2 hours talking about all the other stuff on TikTok.
No, we're not getting, those are, again, there was a little speculation, but again, we called it as speculation, and we also said it, we don't know, but this was all based on factual things that were released from the Moscow Police Department, and we used the language they used as well. So I think that's really important. Again, when you are looking at a case like this, is to go by the facts.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you one question. How, since you wrote a book on narcissism and Facebook and social media, what's the negative impact of these online sleuths and these people that have hundreds of thousands and millions of views and followers going down certain rabbit holes with them? Is there a negative part of that?
Oh, definitely. There's lots. I mean, first of all, some of these people are harassing the victims and the families, and that's awful. Messaging them, trying to get information out of them, giving access to them. And, these families understandably also want the truth out about their kids. They don't want speculation and rumors. There's some pretty awful things that are said about victims that are just completely undeserved. And so, it's the harm caused to the victims and their loved ones. And also, just again, like we were saying, it can compromise the integrity of the case if there's all these theories and people are flooding the tip lines, and the cops have to investigate pretty much everything that comes through. And so I think it can muddle things. But it's like anything, right? It's like there's pros and cons to everything. So there's pros, we know the pros to web sleuths, and not just that website, but just in general, people who like to, figure out crime by social media. But there's some invasion of privacy, like going through all their Venmo transactions and Facebook posts for, throughout the years. And there's sort of, again, that dehumanization of the victims when we do that.
Yeah.
Which is like, these were real people with loved ones who died in a horrific, horrible way that like to have their privacy and everything just kind of picked apart and sensationalized and treated almost, sometimes as a game, like it's a detective game and this is real life. And so I think those are all the cons of the social media aspect of it.
What's the positive?
Well, the positive is, again, you have stuff like, the Gabby Petito case, where actually it was a big break in the case because these van lifers with their camera they spotted the van. They went back to their video footage, the van that Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie were in, and they were able to find her body that way because like they saw where the van was, and that was like the last time they, thought she may have been alive. And so they just walked past the van out into the park and were able to find her remains. So, there's things like that where these people may find things that the cops don't, or see things, or, getting information from people's cell phones and videos and all of that, that can be helpful as well. So again, it's always a mixed bag,
Right,
I think
right.
it's just that having that sensitivity to the victims and their families is key if you're going to be a social media sleuth.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones that I've seen happen in a positive way. You've seen that documentary, Don't Fuck with Cats?
I haven't, but I've heard a lot about it because I'm a cat owner. One of my cats was on my lap for most of this interview.
You have to watch that documentary.
Okay.
It's crazy, but you literally are watching the birth of a serial killer, like in real time.
I've heard about it. Yeah.
And I mean, listen, they don't show actual cats getting killed.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I was like, I don't want to see animals getting killed.
Oh, no.
And I'm back. Okay.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm good. They don't really show it happening. It's like right before, but you kind of show the evolution of him and leading up to a human.
Yeah.
But these internet sleuths were incredible. They're the ones that found this person for
So
Interpol.
There you go. Right. So there you go. I mean, it's like there are some strong positives.
Right. Yeah.
They're gonna find things that maybe the cops won't. And so there you go. So we can't poo-poo on it either, but again, I think it's more about the sensitivity, like not harassing the victims, not creating too many rumors just based on feelings and emotions or ideas, that it's not based in fact, like all of that,
Right. Yeah. You can really,
but I understand why people do it too, I understand that. And I think what's behind it all, the psychology, is that people want to know what happened and they want to see justice and they want to feel safe. And the idea that this person is out there just reminds us, it's an unsafe world. And so I think the idea of having this person captured and arrested, makes people feel that sense of safety again, and again, wanting to see justice. And so I understand people's investment in it.
Right. Definitely. So last thing, can you just recap so we can put it out there, the profile that you're hearing criminal profilers talk about is what?
White dude, probably 20s at most, early 30s, possibly has killed animals before, no empathy, psychopathic, risk-taking, impulsive, angry, likely aggrieved. Again, something personal here, probably somebody known to them, but more on the outskirts, not an inner circle person. Again, probably somewhat of a stalker. They're stalking through social media, watching them, other means like that, but definitely we're looking at a real psychopath, sadist, somebody who enjoyed this, a potential making of a future serial killer. I don't think it's a serial killer right now. I think it's just a mass murder, but I think again that this was maybe the tipping point, and that if this person enjoyed it and got away with it, who's to say it won't happen again?
Right. Okay. Well, there you have it, folks.
There you have it.
Thank you so much again, Lena. And where can people find you and your books and all your social media stuff?
Yeah, you can find me at lenaderhally.com, Instagram, Therapy with Lena. Hit me up on LinkedIn. In my books, my true crime is My Daddy is a Hero, how Chris Watts went from family man to family killer. And there's a little bit of crime in my nonfiction social media book, The Facebook Narcissist, how to identify and protect yourself and your loved ones from social media narcissism.
Yes, awesome. And all those will be in a link below. And Lena, thank you again for coming on and talking about this crazy
Corey,
case.
for taking the idea and running with it. I really
absolutely.
appreciate just all our talks. Thank you.
And I can't wait to go have nightmares. So
I know.
no, I'm kidding though.
You'll wake up at 3 a.m. like I do and being like,
oh no, I'm ready. Listen, but that shit ain't happening here. Knock on wood.
Yeah, no, you got Fort Knox over there.
I'm good.
Same year. Hopefully.
Yeah. Right.
Knock on wood.
Right. Well, that's another episode of the E4 Explicit podcast. We'll see you next time.